Now, one of the big things in this market is that people are searching for that security in the market and they're not really finding it, especially on the lower level. And so we must think portfolio level rather than individual property level. You're never going to find the perfect property that has security, cash flow, and growth in one property, especially if you're buying $1 million property. It just does not exist in this current market. So rather than looking for that one particular property, you really got to think portfolio. If I'm building long term and my retirement goal is 100 grand passive income or 150 grand passive income, then you're going to need a deposit of somewhere around 2 million to 2.5 million to be able to satisfy 150,000 passive income. Now, how do I know that? We do this every single day for our clients, and that's why we know that that is going to be the mark, the benchmark that you need to hit. Now, not all of you have $2 million or $2.5 million in cash or in equity lying around, but this might be a 10-year journey for you. So what you need to commit to is I need to find that $2 million in the next 10 years or 5 years or 7 years, however long your journey is going to be, that you plan to retire and access that equity. And a lot of us can't access that equity straight away. So that might still be a 2 or 3 year journey. And so it's about building the different pieces into your portfolio. That's what I want to show you. And I want to guide you through the general process of how I think about it and what I do. If you are doing this individually, what are the 3 steps you need to do? So the 3 things that we want in any deal is the security, the yield, and the capital growth, right? So cash flow, growth, and security. We typically want that. We see the returns at auction houses. We're typically seeing like someone who has security, like they buy a childcare center or a medical center, and it's like a 3% yield. So they're not getting much cash flow, but they're getting high securities. They're having that spectrum of more security, less yield. But then for those people who are looking for capital growth, they might be buying in a really ultra metro area that has a really great location, just not enough land really. And we've seen that for that drive into people buying the Sunshine Coast when there's not a lot of land available. So there are actually, there's a huge rush to buy land, anything a freestanding building is around 3 mil to 4 mil, because they know in the space of in the blink of an eye become 5. So that's more around that capital gains, right? But if you want all 3, you can't do it in one deal. It has to be a portfolio, right? So that's why I wanted to talk about that on a portfolio basis, right? So to build wealth, you need to build a well-performing robust portfolio, right? You need to have cash flow growth. So you need to have that growth that flows on from cash flow and uplift, right? You need to have those 3 things. So the 3 levels of growing your portfolio, these are the 3 levels that I want to take you through of how I would do it if I was in if I was managing a portfolio, and what I would do in building someone else's portfolios, because that's what I really do and love every day, is looking at people's portfolios and building their passive income. So leverage. So you leverage as much as you can to get the most amount of cash. That's the most at the moment that you do. So the reason I say that is when you say you have $1 million, right? You don't, people go, oh, I need to go and put 150 into shares, and I put 150,000 into another project. Then I'm going to put 600K into a property, right? Or then I'm going to keep 100,000 in buffer, and then I use 500K and I'm going to go buy a property. No. You got to go, here's my $1 million. I'm going to go and buy a $2.5 million property portfolio, right? Because if you don't do that, you're going to fray your portfolio and you're going to be nowhere, right? So, because today's expensive is tomorrow's cheap. Like today you might go, oh, why am I buying 2.5 million when I could buy $1 million property? It's because you want to access a greater class of property. You want to get ahead of the market and beat everyone else, because today's 2.5 will be tomorrow's 4 million, right? So your journey, and this is the other thing, the second step to this is, and I didn't format this properly, the second step is maintain and improve. It's really, really important. And this is where people always fall down, is that maintenance and improve piece, right? You buy a property and you've spent 2.5 million or 2 million, or even if all you can afford is $1 million to start with, and you do nothing in improving and maintaining that property. You let it run, right? Classic example is I have clients who bought a property 3 or 4 years from me, right? And and give them a property 5 or 6 years ago, they don't do any maintenance. It comes to a point where everything comes to disrepair and your tenant stops paying you the market rent. You start having issues with trying to resell value of this. So I have had a client who have had this, had a perfect property at 9% yield. Back in the day, we can get 9% in towns. Will come to me and says, I want you to sell this property, but guess what? It's only doing 6% because it's partially vacant. They didn't take care of it. They didn't do anything. And it takes me 6 to 9 months to work with them to bring that property back to scratch to be able to bring out its resale value, right? This is not what you do. So the second step that's really, really important is taking a good property that you got and making it great. So you might have just a strata property, a simple retail shop front with one tenant in there, right? Well, the idea is there any issues that you can iron out and make it great during that time? Do you have can you renew a lease for them? Is there any maintenance or anything in that shop that you can improve on so that next time you can charge more rent, right? So what is it that you have that you can improve on? So that good to great journey is really great, really important. The good to great journey is so important because if you want to maintain your property portfolio and you want to be able to charge more rent, it's really, really important that you do that. After that, there's some properties where there is a good time to sell, no matter whether you want to keep them forever. Sometimes property has had its use by date and you need to sell it to increase the wealth of your portfolio or buy again. Now, that is really, really key. Now, a lot of people don't understand that because they buy a property and go, I'm going to keep it forever. It's going to be my willable asset. The problem is that property is not going to be worth very much by the time you will it to your kids. Because $1 million property at some point isn't going to be worth 5 million. A property that is going to be, let's say, that you're buying 2.5 million today, that might be a freestanding building in some area that is gentrifying and changing. That's a willable asset, right? That's a willable asset in 10 or 20 years' time. But for some of you, you might not be able to get there first go. Right? That might take you 2 or 3 properties to amalgamate to do that. Now, when I first started, my $1 million purchase was 3 properties. Right? I bought 2 properties in Rocky and 1 property up in Cairns, and that was my $1 million. And I've sold those properties in the last two years or so, and because I was a bit slack, but I would have sold them earlier, but they just had their use by date. But the thing is, the money I made from that, plus my previous deposit, would allow me now to go and buy a $3-4 million property because I know that asset today will now go take me to the next level. Right? So no matter how you think, I'm not a seller, I want to hold on. There is certain amounts of properties that you will need to sell to be able to go to the next level.